Hey guys, how's everyone doing today? Today we're doing an episode of Transformation Time. This is where you get to hear about our guest speakers telling us about their personal development journeys and mindset shifts. It's always nice to hear about this because it's such an important part of of us being able to run our real estate businesses and and businesses. Like being an entrepreneur and running your real estate is so important. Personal development and mindset is so important for these types of things to happen. So hey everyone, I see a few people on. So we are going to be having Shawn Quigg on. He is our guest speaker. I don't think he's here yet. No. So while we wait for Shawn to come on, how is everyone doing? What's everyone having for dinner? Or what projects are you guys working on? Right now I'm just closing up a Hamilton project, so that's kind of taking up my time these days, just finishing up and closing it up. Hopefully that gets done soon. And I'm also already looking for my next flip, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I don't know what happened to Shawn. But yeah, just to recap, we're going to be talking about he's going to be talking about his personal development journey and his mindset shifts. And something that you start learning in these real estate groups is that it really isn't about it. To be honest, it's not about the knowledge of real estate. Like, yes, it's a part of it, but really the most important part is actually you yourself changing and evolving to be the person you need to be to get your business running, to get your real estate running. Okay, awesome. I can see that Shawn's on. I'm just gonna request. Oh, Shawn, I think you need to update your Instagram because I can't request you. So if you want to just quickly hop off and update your Instagram and come back on, then we can have you on and hear your stories. Pizza. Oh my God, you're making me hungry. I actually haven't had dinner yet. After this, I'm going to have dinner. So. And you're giving me bad, I'm trying to eat healthy these days, and hearing about pizza, I love pizza, so you're not helping. Shawn, if you can just let me know, hopefully he's gone back out. He just needs to update his Instagram, and then I'm sure he'll be back in a minute. So yeah, I was just talking about how important it is that yes, knowledge is important about real estate or about starting a business, but the most impactful part is actually your personal development, your mindset shifts. And the reason why that's so important is just because if you yourself don't believe that you can do whatever it is you want to do, for example, do a flip or start a business, buy a wholesale, a buy and hold, sorry, I'm like losing my words, then it really becomes very difficult because if your mind is saying, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, what's going to happen? You're not going to find those opportunities because you're not even looking, right? So so mindset is actually the most important part when it comes to like that. Oh, I think Shawn's back. Let's see. Yep, perfect. Oh, there we go.
Hey Diana,
Hey, how are you?
I'm awesome, thanks. How are you doing?
Great. I'm so excited to have you on and hear about your journey.
Well, it's my pleasure, really. I'm excited to be here and to share about it. It's been quite the journey so far, and really, it's just beginning.
100%. A beginnings for a lot of us. So let's get started. Just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, how, how you got into real estate, whatever you like to share.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, my name's Shawn Quigg. I am a real estate investor lawyer with Carson Law Office. And so what that means is I am both a real estate investor and a lawyer. And I work pretty much exclusively with real estate investors. Everyone doing their first wholesale deal to people buying large commercial multifamily to people who are doing 100 deals a year. And so what that means is, I've got quite the cross section of people that I work with, and the real benefit for me in that is that I get to learn so much. If because most of the people I work with are tremendously successful, and what that means is there's so many different things that I get to sort of be a part of and witness and learn, which has really helped my own personal development and my personal growth, both as an investor and a lawyer. So I got started investing in real estate completely by accident. It was sort of a matter of circumstance. Before I went to law school, I had a job with the federal government, and to go to law school, I had to give that up. So gave up the salary and all of that comes with having a nice, comfortable government job. So what I did was I bought a house in Windsor where I was going to school, and I rented out the rooms to other students. And it didn't take long before I was cash flowing, and I started thinking, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, maybe I should keep going in the real estate space. So it turns out I liked school so much that I added another degree to my law sort of degree. I did a business degree as well, and so in business, we were learning in a corporate finance course about cash, and its value. And, it was true then, back in, I guess, 2017. And it's especially true today that cash is the least valuable asset that a company can have on its books because it simply just loses value every single day through inflation. And so, that it kind of jumped out to me, hey, I've got some savings, I've got access to capital, it's just sitting there. Why don't I buy another property? So I took what I learned from the first time around, and I bought another student rental much closer to the university this time, and much bigger. It had 5 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, so it quickly became a 6 bedroom house. And I had it rented out before I even closed on it. The owner was a realtor and an investor, and so he sort of let me show the property to prospective tenants. So I kind of lucked out in that sense. And I had it rented out on day one almost completely and was cash flowing by month 3. And since then, I've learned so much about how to optimize student rentals, how to make them really work. And I've even supercharged that strategy by adding in some short-term rental components to it. And as a result, that property's doing great now. And, as it started to do even better, and as I was moving out of law school and into articling, which, for those of you who don't know, is sort of like the internship component of becoming a lawyer. It's the last thing you do before you get called to the bar and get your license. So, I was articling in downtown Toronto at a larger firm, and, I liked what I did. I liked the people I worked with, but it wasn't fulfilling me. And, I started to put this idea together that maybe I should pair my profession or my soon to be profession with my personal interest in real estate investing. And so I looked around to see if I could find a mentor who might be a real estate investor lawyer. And there was only one, and it was Ryan Carson of Carson Law. So Ryan and I linked up, and it took a while to be able to put something together, but we eventually did. And now here I am practicing with Ryan at the firm, and really having a great time doing that.
That's awesome. And so you said at the beginning that you bought your first property in Windsor because you were in Windsor. But what made you even think about, like, who influenced you to even think about buying in Windsor to rent it and not just renting another house, for example?
Well, before I had even been accepted anywhere, I was on a vacation with a buddy of mine named Ryan, and we were in Mexico, and he was from the Windsor area, and he said, "Hey, if you get into Windsor, you should just buy a house because they're so cheap." And back then, they were, right? The first property I bought was, I think, 129 or 130,000. Like, you couldn't find anything in Windsor for that now. But it hadn't even occurred to me. I hadn't even thought that was possible. I was living in Toronto at the time, where home ownership, for me seemed impossible. And so it really, I got this advice from someone who was from the area, and that's what triggered me to actually consider it. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, hey, that might be a good idea. And then it just so happened that Windsor chose me. And so, off to school I went, or off to acceptance I went, and then it went time to go house hunting. So I hired a realtor who helped me out and made a couple trips down from Toronto, and picked a house, and turns out it was a great choice.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great that you had someone to tell you that because not a lot of people will have that. And then like that, it could have been a missed opportunity. Like you still went to Windsor, but you may have been renting instead. So
That's
that's
right.
awesome that you had that.
Yeah.
And so you also were talking about that that being a lawyer, specifically a real estate lawyer, it helped you to learn a lot. And so I'm just going to actually tell you first my experience, because also similarly with me, like I love actually private lending is because I get to see how people analyze their deals and structure their deals to actually make a deal work. So I feel like it's kind of similar to what you're saying because I get to see other people do things and then it gives me ideas and I'm like, put that in my back pocket. So I'm curious to hear about for you as a lawyer, what kind of things have you learned? Um, being able to see other
Mm.
people's deals.
Well, the first one unequivocally is mindset, and learning how to be even more of an abundance mindset. And that's translated both in my profession and on the investing side, right? So, I have a number of clients that I do business with now on an individual or personal basis, because these are people who have impressed me with what they're doing. And it was time to say, hey, listen, like, maybe we can join up and start to do some cool things together. And that's really been awesome. I'm having a great time working with a number of people that are clients of the firm. And in doing so, I've learned a lot about, number one, wholesaling. So on top of being a lawyer, I also wholesale properties from time to time, and I'm learning a lot about marketing and pricing and how to create better win-wins for everybody, right? And you and I've talked about this before, that the wholesale deal's got to be three wins. It's got to be a win for the seller, for the ultimate buyer, and for you. And so learning how to maximize those wins has been quite helpful and fruitful.
100%. Yeah, and that was another point, the good point that you made that, yeah, by seeing how people run their deals, you kind of also, see like, oh, I might want to work with them because you're getting to see that. So it's kind of true. I also see the same thing when I see their deals. It's like, oh, they really know how to
Mm-hmm.
analyze that deal properly or structure properly or whatever. I'm like, I want to next one. I'm like, I need to partner with that one,
Well, I
or just
had
continue lending to them.
right. I had a conversation with one of my clients yesterday, and I was telling him about of the book I'm sure you've read, and based on who I can see is watching today, most of the viewers have also read, and that's Who Not How, right? And so I was explaining this book to him. I said, you have become one of my who's, and as a result, I'm one of yours, and that's really cool. There's a lot of
Mhm.
value creation in that, right? Like, the role that I'm in, it makes me a pretty busy guy. So my day is pretty full. So to spend time and effort, trying to figure out how to actually physically market a deal, for instance, it's just I run out of time in the day to be able to do that. So to partner with someone who not only knows how to do it, but is quite good at it, just creates a win-win. On top of that, we've already created a win for the seller who got terms that they are interested in, that are unique to them, and they got a price they needed. And so it's a really cool thing to work with others and be able to leverage each other's strengths.
Completely agree. Yeah. And actually a great point that you're alluding to is that, there's people who have money and no time. There's people who have have time but no money. And there's obviously also the in-betweens also. But that's like one of I feel like the first thing that people should kind of look at to help them really hone in and decide, like, here are all these different strategies and what actually interests me and what works within my schedule. Or like maybe you want to do a specific strategy, but like you said, you don't have time because being a lawyer, you guys work crazy hours. You guys do work crazy hours. So, but at least in there, then you can, identify what's going to work for you and still be able to do both things.
That's right. And, I get to make the best use of my time, and other people get to make the best use of theirs. And we all win. And it's fun, right? It's fun to create those scenarios and to really add value to the lives of others, not just through, obviously, the services I provide as a lawyer, or our firm provides as a law firm, but simply in business in general.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And so getting more into real estate, what kind of skills do you feel like you had that helped you? Just, for example, like that, getting to wholesaling, for example. Do you feel like, what kind of skills did you have?
Well, I didn't start with too many, right? Like I started from the bottom and did the education, learned how to invest, learned how to run numbers, how to underwrite deals. What it really came down to, the real skill set that one needs in this field is tenacity, and that is proving more and more true every single day. Especially leading up to maybe the last week or so, where it was getting harder and harder to find deals, to perhaps even create deals. We've seen an interesting shift in the last week or so with the combination of the interest rate hike and the war, and the effect on the real estate market, which I don't suspect will last all that long, but nevertheless, it's here now. But leading up to recently, it was getting really hard to find deals, and so being able to be tenacious, to continue looking, to not get discouraged, right? To for our wholesalers, and I see there's a few wholesalers on today's call, to continue spending on flyers and getting those out there, and trying to find a way to create some value for sellers. Or if it's making offers on the MLS, finding properties that have a way to create value so that you can afford to pay what the seller is wanting or expecting. So tenacity is really the big one, in terms of skill sets that I've sort of developed and honed over time, over being an investor in real estate since, I guess, 2015. And what else?
Well, I'll make a point to
Critical
that. I
thinking.
think that's very, oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Diana.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's a very good point that you're making about tenacity, because exactly what you're saying right now, it is very hard, but to find properties like you're saying, but exactly what you're saying, like just continually making those steps is so important, and just continuing to not give up. And it's kind of like one of those, maybe before you were looking at 10 properties and then finally finding one, whereas like now maybe it turned more into like 20 or 30 properties, but it will still happen as you search and try to find, and like you said, you analyze like how the economy is, how the environments are in the different cities, and figuring out where you can still get those properties that meet whatever your requirements are for whatever strategy. And so I think that's a very good point that you made, especially right now.
Well, thank you. And it sort of just makes sense, right? You've got to be tenacious when we're dealing with prices that just continue to go up. The second point I was going to raise was critical thinking. I gave a talk yesterday about joint venture agreements and not overwriting deals where we fudge the numbers to make them work. Right? Critical thinking requires, first of all, being firm on your assumptions, being firm on your goals and your minimum standards, and also really trying to dive into figuring out whether a deal is a deal. I see this a lot with newer investors where, in fact, I had a client a month or so ago who overwrote the deal and, had some rose-colored glasses, to borrow from a phrase, to when putting the deal together, and as a result, was put in a bind that she had to battle through and figure out. And there's only so much help I can offer as a lawyer in that scenario. But as a business person, I offer a couple of pieces of advice for how to get out or how to make it work. Make it work was the focus, but it really takes critical thinking to do well and to scale and to be successful as a real estate investor, because not everything is what it seems. Like, I remember when I was buying, so I have a couple of multifamily properties in New Brunswick, and I remember when I was buying, I was in a buying phase the first time that I was acquiring in New Brunswick. And I was looking at on-market deals, and I was getting these numbers, due diligence numbers from realtors, and they weren't the whole picture, right? They were not the whole picture. They were missing half the expenses, half the things that I needed to account for. But they were being sold at the cap rate based on the NOI, using only the expenses they'd factored in. And as a result, I was seeing these unbelievable deals show up on my spreadsheet, but then realizing, oh, it's because they're not accounting for instance, property management or vacancy, or, in New Brunswick, you've got to factor in garbage disposal or utilities. Having utilities included is actually quite common in New Brunswick. And so, it took time to really hone that critical thinking skill and make sure that I had a deal locked up and I got out because the realtor failed to disclose so many costs that, I got closer to going firm, and it was going to be a cash flow negative deal as I learned more and more about what was not disclosed in the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It is very important. And like you were alluding to earlier, is that not compromising on your criteria. If you know what your criteria is, and like you said, your bottom line for that, you shouldn't compromise, especially because like that, times are getting harder now to find deals. And I feel like a lot of people will probably either be like, oh, it's going to continue skyrocketing, so you know what, let's just work with some fictitious future values or something, or
Right.
or it's just like they just start like, oh, like what a thing that I see a lot is like, oh, property management is, let's say, 10%, 8 to 10%. Then you're like, you know what, I can probably get away with it being 6%. And then all of a sudden they get a property manager and then it's 8%, and it's just kind of like, or interest
Right.
rates, right? Like, oh, like it works with 3%, but can you actually get an interest rate of 3%? Like, how realistic is that? So
Right.
it is very important to, like, exactly what you're saying, like this critical thinking and being realistic and just taking the time. Like, it's okay that, okay, this one didn't work. It's like the 20th one, but whatever, it's like just keep on chugging along and it will come. And then, yeah, maybe things are slower than usual for you to find the amount of properties, but it's rather you want to get the right properties than,
That's right.
put yourself into a situation that could probably be pretty bad for you, especially like that, because times are getting pretty interesting, and you just don't know what can happen. So you could put yourself in a very compromising position.
That's right. That's right.
So what about now during your journey, what do you feel like are the mindset shifts that you've experienced or the changes that you've seen in yourself?
Mm. Well, to start, it's my focus is turned to value creation. You know, people need people need lawyers, right? And that's I'm there. I perform that role. But what I'm really trying to do, what I'm really focused on, is not just being a lawyer, but I'm focused on creating value by being someone who, doesn't just close your deals. Because frankly, lots of lawyers can close your deals. But being an being an advocate for your deal, for your strategy, being someone who you can bounce a business idea off of, or someone who can introduce you to maybe that one person that you need to make your deal or your business work better, right? Being able to be a value creator is so rewarding, right? Because
Mhm.
yeah, you get to have a real impact. I get to have a real impact on people's lives and people's businesses, and that's quite fulfilling. And as a result, what I find is generally people like to stick around. Once they come in, they like what we do at Carson Law, and it's in part because of that. Because so many of us at the firm are focused on creating value for others, and not just of course collecting the legal fee.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And I am a testament because I see how it is actually very nice because it is, we're so used to like lawyers being like, we can't really give you information until like you start paying or whatever. And then it's very true. You are very different where it's just like you'll actually give advice and it's nice because sometimes you need that little like information before you can make a decision for something or see how it impacts you. So I do love how much you do that, and that's amazing to hear that you're doing that because I don't think very many lawyers do that.
People run their businesses, their law firms the way they see fit, and there are only a few of us that really focus on investors, and I have
Mhm.
nothing but good things to say about the rest of them. But that's what we're focused on is really just creating value and helping where we can, and being an advisor.
Mhm. That's amazing. What about what about your money mindset? Have you had any shifts or changes with that, or any even blockages that you've just seen in your working, trying to work through them?
Well, originally, when I first started out, like many people, I was focused on generating as much revenue as I could and not having to share it, right? So that changed, right? That changed. I eventually brought on my dad, who's my private lender, and I'm paying him way more than I would pay anyone else, and I'm happy to do it because he stepped up and was there and help me out, and as a result, it's a win-win for him too. And so in terms of money mindset, what I'm trying to do is focus on expanding the pie, right? We talk about that in business quite a bit. Instead of slicing the pie up, we want to expand the pie so that we can share more of the deal with others, so that they can win as well. And that's really what it's come down to with partnering with some of the people I work with in the firm. It's so much better to be able to say, hey, this is your strength, take this and run with this, and take a good slice of whatever we generate. I find that fun now. That's it's almost like a game to see how much we can really enrich the lives of each other. And so really, my money mindset has gone from how do I maximize to how do I maximize with others.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Especially because I'm curious to hear your point, but I know when I was younger, through family and maybe like society, it was I felt like you have to be independent, do it on your own. And I always found that so hard because I was just like, how do you do it just on your own? Especially my personality very much is a very team-oriented person. So you have these people telling you one thing and you're not really that. Like I'm not one person to just try to do everything on my own. I'm
Right.
curious what was your view when you were younger before you started getting into this mindset?
Yeah, do everything on myself, right? Figure out how. I asked how so much. I still am resisting the urge to ask how, right? But Dan Sullivan put it so well. You got to stop asking how. You got to ask who can help me with this, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to spend so much time spinning your tires on how and not focusing on what's going to maximize your time and your effort and your return. And so, yeah, man, I asked how so much when I was younger. And I wish that book had been out or I'd known about the concept of asking about who, because, I've started implementing this a little bit more now, and it's been wonderful. It's nice to, be able to not have to try and bear down and learn something that I just don't need to learn if I can, enrich someone else's life who knows what they're doing by offering them part or some form of compensation, etc.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And how about trust? Having the trust with partnerships. Because again, with me, it was always being independent. One of the reasons was because you can never trust anyone. It's like you can't trust people. Was that one of your fears? Did you have a fear of that? Let's say trust when getting into a partnership?
Well, actually, I'm probably more trusting than I should be. Yeah. So I've never really had a trust issue. What I've had is an over trust issue,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's luckily have come out mostly unscathed. But what I have found is that when you do place trust in others, generally that trust comes back. And what I'm finding is when I treat people with trust to start, call it naive, I don't know, but so far it's worked out for me because instead of approaching people with suspicion and guards, I'm approaching people with open arms in a sense, and so I find people really respond well to that.
That's amazing. And so since you trust a lot, then what do you think what have you learned from having to reduce it a little bit? Like what kind of things have happened that made you realize, okay, or what do you look for, I would say, to kind of, help you be like, okay, I need to like not trust the whole world.
You know, when I have clients come in and ask about joint venture agreements or talk about maybe getting into one, the first thing I tell them is do pre-diligence on your partner. Talk to them about anything other than real estate because it's tons of fun to talk cash flow and appreciation, etc. But what I'm getting them to do is to figure out who they're doing business with, what kind of person they're doing business with. And so I've implemented this in my own life. I try and have conversations about anything other than the business that we're doing because I get a sense of who they are as a person. And if I like who they are as a person, I'm ready to go, right? Until you prove me otherwise, if I assess you as a good person intuitively, then I'm ready to work with you. It's when I get a different sense, that I perhaps shy away or go in a different direction.
hmm That's great. Yeah, that's a very great tip. Um, yeah, because yeah, you always see. I feel like that's the opposite, right? I feel like there's some people like, let's say with me, I feel like I start from a zero, and it's like I need to build up that trust. You're like at the max. You're like my husband. Start at 100% trust, and then I'll reduce as you get to know them.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, any other mindset shifts that you feel like you've gone through this real estate and entrepreneurship journey, and even as a real estate lawyer?
Um, I've Sort of building off something I've been talking about quite a bit throughout our time today, the whole concept of who, not how, it's really placing my faith in others. And, we talked about trusting individuals in terms of their trustworthiness. But another component to that is to trust them to do what they do and trust them to do it well. Right. We all probably, anyone who was a high performer in school or who was dedicated to what they were doing in school remembers what it was like working in a group, right? Where you were the only person doing anything, but everyone else got the credit, etc. I got burned a ton as a kid in that scenario, doing the whole thing. And, where it really changed was first in law school. Because you had to be pretty serious to go to law school. There's quite the barrier to get in, and then there's quite the cost barrier. So you're generally pretty serious. So I had to learn, and I learned pretty quickly that if you get into a group setting and there's a responsibility on each person to do something, it generally happens. And then in my business degree, we had a ton of group work. And the commitment level wasn't quite the same, but it was still there. It was still a master's degree. It was still, people doing important things, really trying to push forward in their lives. And so what I learned from that was that at this level, once you get to the professional level, it's so important to put faith in others, to trust in others, to do their part. And that's really served me well in law because I work with a great team and with people who are very good at what they do. And that's allowed me to free up my time to not have to worry about what they're doing. This isn't doing a group project in high school anymore. This is relying on people to perform their role, to perform it well. And, when it comes to other lawyers that I work with, if they say they're going to do something, they are. And that's been an awesome sort of transformation for me, being out, going from the guy that just took it all on because I couldn't put any faith in anyone to do anything, to be able to say, okay, you got it. I'll see you at the finish line, that sort of thing. And same with our staff, right? Of course, as a lawyer, I do have to oversee your staff, but I can put my faith in them and simply just verify when it's done, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately that's my role. But I get to sort of empower them to do what they do, and they do it well, and then get to congratulate them when they do. So that's been a cool transformation, and has been a wonderful sort of change from early days.
That's amazing. And I think also with that, I feel like communication, you've probably also been because working with teams and then working, let's say, with your staff and everything, I feel like communication becomes a big part. How has that impacted you? How has it, like, what even changes have you made in communication through your learning experiences?
Well, I found as a kid and, even as a young adult, that my communication, my requests of others were almost apologetic in nature. Sorry, can you just do this? Or, would you do this? Now, there is no need to be apologetic, right? When you're working in a system and we rely on each other to do things to move the business forward, my communication has turned into sort of, this is what it is. And so, in that sense, I'm trying to empower people to really take on their role and to do it well and to feel like they can be independent, that they can perform their role independently. So now it's a, hey, please do this. And that's it. And they get to, do it how they see fit. They're the experts at their role, right? Who am I to tell them how to do their role? So now I've moved away from being an apologetic requester of people and now more to an empowering one, where I try to really make people feel good about what they're doing and to have the autonomy to be able to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I also have that problem where you get used to saying exactly like you're very apologetic for things, whereas as you start growing, you realize that you have to exactly be more empowering and because it's not only for them, but it's also for yourself. It just and it just shows even your confidence in you because I feel like if you're more apologetic, it comes off as does this person really know what they want? You know?
That's right.
Whereas like if you're actually saying it uh with confidence, it will come out that way and then they have confidence in you that you know what it is that you're asking for. And it's funny, someone brought that up to me and I was kind of in shock because I was thinking like I'm just trying to be nice, you know? And they're like, but
Right.
you're being nice in the wrong way.
Yeah. So, it shows up in a really sneaky way. Actually, my least favorite word in the English language is the word just. I challenge everyone who's on the call to think or to notice, to what's the word? To observe how many times you use the qualifier just. Hey, would you just do this, please? Or I'm just wondering, or I'm just trying to be nice. That's an apologetic word. I like to encourage people and also myself to speak powerfully. And when you use the word just, you actually take all the power out of what you're saying, and you put yourself at a subservient level to an equal person, an equal being with you, another human. And there's no need to do that. There's no need to be apologetic because you don't need to ask people permission to converse with them. And so
Hmm.
I encourage everyone to take for a day, see how many times you use the word just, and see if you can replace it. See if you can replace it or simply eliminate it with something
Or
that's a
like it
little more
doesn't even need
powerful.
to be there. Because I do the same. I notice it a lot more. When I speak, I probably say it too, but I don't even realize. But I notice it when I write messages, and I'll say, "Oh, I was wondering if you could." And then it's funny because, especially when when it's specifically to my employees, I'm like, "Why am I saying that?" And then it's like you cross it out. That doesn't even need that sentence. That just doesn't even
No,
need to be there.
it just needs to be, would you please do this? Or
Yeah,
kindly
that's
have
it.
this done by, X time.
Hmm.
Because that's actually speaking powerfully, right? Please do this. It's polite, it's
Hmm.
courteous, and if you attach a deadline to it, then, your staff has the empowerment to go do it how they see fit, get the job done, and they have an expectation. And that's a way to create fulfillment in a role.
That's funny you say about the date. In my previous job, I don't know what it was. I would notice people would never give dates for anything. And I found that actually very annoying, to be honest. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, for some reason, I felt rude because I would always be like, can please have this done by this date? Or can I and then, but everyone would always just be like, oh, okay, this needs to be done. And then it would never get done because there's no like dates to it.
All right. Well, there's an old saying that which gets measured gets done, right? And part of measurement is a timeline and
Hmm. Hmm.
a deadline, right? So if you
Hmm.
don't set a deadline, then there's no motivation. There's nothing to work
Exactly.
towards.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's great to hear because to be honest, I always had a struggle with that because I like having like time frames and deadlines. And so I would obviously use that on others, but I always wondered, is that rude to do that? Because at least in the company I was before, never got timelines for anything. It was kind of like, do it whenever you can. I don't know. Then I was just like, really?
You're
And
right.
I'm like, that's so hard for me.
Well, if you think about it, you're the example. Like not giving timelines actually it makes it harder, creates more anxiety. How
Hmm.
do you know if this is something that needs to be done tomorrow or by the end of the month or by the end of the year? And if it's
Hmm.
by the end of the year, we should probably break it down into smaller tasks because
Mhm.
that's too far out. It's not if it's due by the end of 2022, then it's not getting work done until December.
Exactly. And then that's probably going to be stressful because you have all this work that you have to get done and you're trying to
Right.
make your deadlines.
And there's only half a month in December, so.
Exactly. So last burning question. So what do you see yourself, where do you see yourself in the next like 5 to 10 years? Like what's your big, big goal?
Uh, I like what I'm doing. I want to find a way to continue to offer value at a higher level, where I can have a full team working with me so that, I can still offer the same value, but spend less time doing it. I'd like to create some more time freedom. So, that looks like finding people who are deal creators, who are people who know how to solve problems. That's really what this job is just solving problems, who
Hmm.
understand what real estate investing is, and who are also lawyers. So that, I can build a team of people that, perform a similar function to me, not necessarily me or carbon copies of me, uh, but people who can serve a wide cross section of real estate investors, offer very similar value to what I can. That way I can focus on being able to show a greater number of people that there really is value in working with someone who knows what they're doing, who does it too.
Hmm.
And so time freedom's probably the big one. If I can find a way to cut the number of hours down to a reasonable level and do it maybe a few months a year from the Caribbean, I think I could probably handle that.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. It was so great chatting with you and getting to know you more, especially on like that, the personal development and mindset side. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I had a great time.
Awesome. So we'll see everyone in the next episode. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Oh, can never, for some reason, I can never, for some reason, there we go.